If you are currently leveling up your Django and Postgres skills with this tutorial, you might like to know that this tutorial is part of a whole playlist where you will learn how to, with Django and Postgres, create database level constraints and triggers. If you like this playlist and you would like to learn more about Django ORM, then do check out our Django ORM Mastery course on Udemy. Links to the playlist and course can be found in the video description. So in addition to making changes to the project folder structure, you may also decide at some point you want to rename the Django root project folder or rename the Django project. If you remember, when we create a new Django project, a new project folder is created with the name that we supply when we specify we want to create a new project in Django from the command line. And that name is then utilized as the folder name for our project. And this is where we find the settings.py file and other files related to managing our Django project. Now, there may be an occasion where you want to actually change that. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to do that, because there are a few settings that we need to change or within the project files to make sure that it's all pointing now to the new name that we create for our project folder. So let's call this core. So when renaming the Django project folder that contains the settings, it can be common to see people use names such as core or maybe config, or potentially the project name itself like we had before. So each naming choice will have its own set of advantages and disadvantages. For example, using a word such as core, that isn't necessarily immediately obvious to anyone working on the project what this folder is related to. If we were to, for example, rename this config, that might be considered maybe the clearest and most descriptive choice, which relates to the files that you'll find inside of this core project or main project folder. So we're going to go with core, and now what we need to do is make sure that everything is now pointing towards that folder, because it does have the settings file which is needed to run our Django application. Now when we run our Django application, we do that from the manage.py file. So if we take a look at this file, we will find a reference to e-commerce. So we're going to need to change that now to core.settings. So that's the first place. And now if we move back into the core, let's go into settings. Let's search for e-commerce. Okay, so you can see that there is a few references to e-commerce. So we're going to need to change those. So we'll change that to core. So we do this one at a time. So you can see the root URL config. We need to change that to core.url. So you can see the WSGI application settings refers to e-commerce. So we're going to need to change that. And we can still call this the e-commerce project. We don't need to change the text there. In actual fact, I'm going to remove that. I don't need that in my project particularly. And there we go. So, one more, sorry. The root config doesn't look like it was changed. There we go. So that's all the changes now inside the settings file. So we should now be able to, assuming we are in the right place. So let's just cd back into the Django inventory. So let's go ahead and just run that, run server, just make sure everything is working. So it looks like everything now has been changed, and we've now changed the core project folder to core and all the settings pointing to that folder. Now, maybe I've skipped this or I forgot to tell you this. Now that we're working in the terminal, having to move into folders, etc., I mentioned that cd change directory, that allows us to move forward into a directory, but I didn't tell you how to move back out. So let's just close the server here. So we're currently residing inside of the Django inventory folder here. This is where the terminal is currently placed. So if you do want to move back out to the root directory, then you're going to need to type cd .. So that's going to allow you to move back. So if I do that and press enter, you can now see when I ls to list all the files, I've now moved the terminal back into the root of our project. So cd goes forward, and then cd .. that allows you to move back, forward and backwards whenever we need to move into different folders inside of our project within the terminal. If you are new to utilizing the terminal, it's well worth having a little bit of a practice. Just familiarize yourself going in and out of folders.